Man, what a night of NBA Cup action. It is still technically Friday night. We have one more minute left on the East Coast. We were at Chase Center. We came back. We had to catch up on all the rest of the games. Let's do a podcast right now. NBA Cup night 4 is in the books. A Friday night. Really interesting stuff, both for the groups, just some good matchups as well. But I think we still will go beyond our myopia on the NBA Cup to talk about a matchup between two of the three best teams in the league, Denver and Houston.
And it was a really fun game and had a lot of interesting ebbs and flows. Unfortunately, a lot of it came without Aaron Gordon, who left the game early with a hamstring issue. We haven't gotten the severity, but it doesn't seem good. Still, though.
And quickly on that, before you move on, he had missed Wednesday's game with a hamstring issue. Seemed like he wanted to come back. Remember, last year it was a calf that was a big issue, but then, of course, at the very end of Game 6, he hurts the hamstring against Oklahoma City. This one was his right hamstring, I believe. And it looked pretty bad. Like, he definitely was moving like a guy with a hamstring injury. He drove, kind of got jostled. His right leg got a little too far out in front of him. And that's just a perfect way to hurt your hamstring, unfortunately, as he was landing, trying to control his momentum. And so he had to leave the game pretty much immediately. But yeah, Denver managed to pull it out anyway. And there are just so many interesting aspects of this. I kind of want to just go through it first, and then maybe we can take stock at the end and just what we learned generally about these teams. So, and number one, Nikola Jokic just was awesome again. Denver went for it in the NBA Cup, played him 39 minutes, in part because Gordon was out. They just brought him in at power forward when Gordon would have normally come in the fourth quarter. 34 points, 1 assist shy of a good game, 10 rebounds, 4 offensive, 4 of 8 from 3 as well. And still just someone that the Houston Rockets didn't quite have an answer for in the end.
Something you and I have been really paying attention to this season is Jokic's incredible efficiency away from the basket. So Jokic, 11 of 20 from the field, but he only took 3 shots inside 5 feet. The rest of it, he took 9 twos outside of 5 feet. He was 5 of 9 on those. He was 4 of 8 from 3. Got to the line 10 times. Some of that was inside. Only one of those fouls actually occurred within 5 feet. And so Jokic is just, his touch is unbelievable. He's facilitating, he's passing, and he's just he's a complete offensive player in a way that I don't think anybody has, at least in the Dunked On era, and you're better on it pre-Dunked On era than I am.
No, it's remarkable, especially because he always has that trump card of just shooting a 3, right? And he made 4 out of 8 of those in this one, and had one that could have totally iced the game that somehow spun out and didn't go down, where you're just, I mean, if you're an opposing fan going up against him, your heart's got to be in your throat because you just expect every single one of these to go in. And then, of course, it was the pick and roll with Jamal Murray late that you just give him someone who's a pretty good ball handler, and then that's just another crazy way for him to attack. And it's just really the only way that I've seen that's worked against him at this point in his career is just put a smaller guy on him and just don't even let him get the ball to begin with. Now, Houston didn't really go that route. They largely just guarded him with Alperen Şengün. I think they felt like they were going to load up in other ways. They wanted to put Amen Thompson on Jamal Murray. Now, they didn't really try to switch that at all, but Amen Thompson's not going to be able to guard Jokic in the post. That's part of it. I don't know how good Şengün is going to be on Jamal Murray. And so if you can't switch that, and you don't really have the personnel out there to deny the ball to Jokic, what they ended up doing is pretty vanilla, honestly, against Denver. Now, they gave up 112. It was a 120 offensive rating, though, because between these two teams, it's not surprising, it was kind of a slower-paced game, and both teams were hitting the offensive glass like crazy, too. But And one takeaway has just got to be that, I mean, like pretty much everybody, there was not an answer for Nikola Jokic. And I mean, I do think maybe you can say, well, they did reasonably decently to just keep him from killing them on the glass. Although he did have 4 offensive rebounds or sorry, not on the glass, in the paint. And you forced him to shoot more jumpers and he made him this game, but that's kind of what you have to live with. Like, okay, I can maybe accept that as well. But I also thought with the limited shooters that Denver had out there, they maybe could have done a little bit better in terms of forcing Denver to beat them from the outside. But what did you think? Anything else on how Jokic played or how Houston was dealing with him?
Not really. If these teams end up playing a playoff series, which I would love to see, I would be interested in going in a very different direction in some of these coverages and trying out the combination of Amen Thompson and Jabari Smith. So kind of going to a hybrid. So basically Amen on Jamal Murray and then Jabari Smith, and you could do some switching, bring some doubles.
Yeah.
And particularly with Aaron Gordon out, and Ime Udoka did not know that was going to happen before the game and how much you want to do for a single regular season contest. But Peyton Watson was on the floor for a significant part. And Peyton Watson's been, he's an interesting part of the story for the Denver Nuggets now because he's been starting even with Aaron Gordon healthy because they needed somebody with Christian Brown out. But there's going to be somebody generally on the Nuggets that you don't have to guard as aggressively. Spencer Jones is another one. As much as I like him, is another player kind of like that. And so I would like to, in a more extended version, to see some of that other stuff, because Houston, they actually have the personnel. I agree with you that they were very vanilla. They don't have to be. They have additional flavors they can throw in. They don't have to do. I'm not saying they had to do it in this game, but they have that. And Ime Udoka, there's a part of me, and it's why I'd really like to see this as playoff series, that wants to see Ime Udoka really mix it up defensively, since he has the personnel, and the way that I've criticized them at times that their offense is kind of vanilla. I mean, they do a good job within their constraints, but also dealing with in playoffs. So I'm not going to kill the Rockets or Ime Udoka for being a little bit traditional in a single game, but I'm flagging it in my head as like, okay, you had the possibilities to do something else. Maybe it would have worked. Maybe it wouldn't have, but because they only had one playoff series last year and they lost to the Warriors, which was a bizarre series for a lot of reasons. Something I'm keeping in mind.
Now they certainly did some weird shit in that series, right? Like they did the 2-3 zone that morphed into a matchup if Steph Curry went into their area, and they flummoxed the Warriors for basically 2 full games with that. So no, I mean, they definitely went to some different stuff in that series. But yeah, I think it's worth noting a few things. Number one, Tari Eason is out now. We haven't talked about that yet with a oblique strain, 4 to 6 weeks. Kind of a bummer for him again that he's struggling to stay healthy in a contract year. And then also Dorian Finney-Smith remains out for them. We haven't heard anything about when he's supposed to come back. And then they also were playing Reed Sheppard down the stretch, which I don't think Ime Udoka thought he was going to be doing. Maybe we should talk about Sheppard's game, because he was ridiculous in the first half.
Overall in the game, Reed Sheppard, 27 points, 9 of 13 from the field, 5 of 8 from 3. And there were some points where he was incredibly disruptive on the defensive end, and he forced his way into starting the second half and closing the game.
Yeah, now it was at times in the second half, if you're not going to involve him in the action, then why is he out there? Now, part of that is just because he can shoot, right? And he was making shots, and they don't really have anyone else who can make shots, because they started with the double big. They didn't really have anyone else, unless it was going to be Josh Okogie, which I wouldn't recommend getting another non-shooter out there. So I would have liked, and to have Şengün and Thompson, and then to have Sheppard and Jabari Smith out there too. Like I think they had a pretty decent formula against Denver's defense. They just didn't necessarily execute it that well. Back to Sheppard, he got going after what was a absolutely brutal first quarter. He started to get Houston out of it, and then really got going in the second. mostly at the expense of Jonas Valanciunas in drop coverage. Shepherd actually was 4 of 4 in the paint in this game and hit one short jumper, but then had a couple of nice little contested hook shots as he drove in against that drop coverage. He hit a couple of threes against the drop as well from up top, and then hit a couple of quick ones in the corner that he got set up for. And what was his overall line?
I'll do the first half stats because you mentioned that and I didn't do it. 15 minutes, 20 points, 8 of 11 from the field, 4 of 6 from 3, 4 of 5 from 2, 2 assists, and was plus 14. And I mean, it was awesome. And he was a big reason why the Denver Nuggets held the Houston Rockets to 1-2 points in the first quarter, and yet the Rockets led at halftime.
Yeah, 37 points second quarter, much of it done by Shepherd. And you could see just, again, this is the first time he's really been out there with the starters. This is the first time he's really been hot. And they have a bunch of other stuff they want to do, including that KD Şengün pick and roll, which was the thing that I was focused on when they first acquired KD, of like, how are you going to guard this? This is going to be pretty difficult. And then again, that's been killing the league. I thought they could have executed a little bit better, but you could see the potential of it down the stretch when they just ran that every single time. But this is the first time that Shepherd has kind of been part of it. So there are many other things you could do if you are going to have Shepherd out there and he's shooting like this as he's continuing to be really effective. 5 of 8 from 3 overall in the game. And so a couple of things he had that really stood out to me. He ran a 5-1 pick and roll with Şengün, popped out and just lightning quick release over Tim Hardaway Jr. That's when he was like absolutely molten at the end of the quarter. Then
on that front, I'm waiting for the Rockets to use I get whatever position we're calling Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant with Reed Shepherd as the screener actions late. I think depending on where teams are going to put their personnel against the Rockets, I think that could open up some real seams.
Yeah, let's talk more about that at the end, because I thought we really want to get into that in particular, because you can get an idea of how these teams are stressing one another out. So I would say that the other thing that was pretty interesting was Shepherd. You could see, all right, well, hey, he's shooting this 3 off the pick and roll. He's getting a road grader screen from Steven Adams. Your drop center, Jonas Valanciunas. Hey, you're going to have to come up with something a little bit different here. He's maybe too slow to get out on him. And so Jokic was up a little bit more, and Shepherd threw this unbelievable pass to Amen Thompson along the baseline from like 30 feet away for a dunk, which was very impressive. There's these little flashes from Reed, and obviously it all comes down to him making shots, which I was a little bit worried about. It seems quite foolishly after the first couple games of the season. Like, all right, when is this guy actually going to become this unbelievable shooter? Well, actually, the moment I questioned it, it was the answer to that. And so he's been awesome. We did the video on him before. And so, yeah, I mean, using him as the screener more. But he also can be effective off the ball, spacing the floor. There was one time in crunch time where KD was trying to run his pick and roll with Şengün. They kind of got a little closer to the middle of the floor than they wanted to, and KD was like waving Shepherd away, but he kind of didn't really have anywhere to go because Smith was already in the corner. But I think, I mean, I said that we talked about this later, we talk about it now. I think involving Shepherd, because he's also going to be guarded by generally a weaker defender, try to get, maybe you could have Shepherd be the ball handler and KD and Şengün setting double screens. Maybe you could have Shepherd be the second screener and involve whoever's guarding it. Maybe Jamal Murray or Cam Johnson were usually the two guys. And then you get that guy rather than Peyton Watson on the KD with the first screen. And then you can run your pick and roll with Shepherd spacing out. So there are definitely, when you have a shooter like that, especially when you can shoot it off the pick and pop, you know, he's going to have to get a chemistry with these guys. You have to get better as a screener. There's so many things that have to happen. Like, he is a second year player, and he's not going to close every night. And they're going to have Eason. They're going to have Dorian Finney-Smith. Steven Adams might get the close sometimes too. But I did think I liked that Ime Udoka at least started him in the second half. I didn't like that they just completely forgot he existed offensively in the second half.
Yeah, I was going to look it up. Reed Shepherd in the second half, yeah, he only took 2 shots from the field in 22 minutes. It's incredible.
Yeah, Rockets Twitter. I'm especially anytime there's like a young stud that the coach is perceived to not be playing enough, like that team Twitter X is going to melt down about that. So a couple other little performances that stood out. Obviously, Gordon only played 3 minutes. And again, both teams went for it. Jamal Murray was awesome. 25 points, 10 of 16 from the field. He was 7 of 9 from 2. And had 10 assists. I thought he had a pretty good passing game. He just continues to look really good. I mean, and that's to me is the all the stuff. Cam Johnson, is he better? Or Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter Jr. did light up Boston today. Aaron Gordon is hurt. They've already got Christian Braun hurt, but like all-star Jamal Murray, and if he keeps playing like this, he will make the all-star team this year because Denver is going to make it. It will be going really well. All-star Jamal Murray, all-star Nikola Jokic. That's a pretty decent formula. And not only for this year, but because I was sort of like, man, they're kind of on the decline. Murray's just a guy. Like, no, he's back to playing at all-star level. Like, that's just such a massive development that he's able to get the separation. He drove down the lane late and was able to finish over 2 guys. And that's just not the type of plays that we've seen from him in the last couple of years.
It's massive for what Denver is and what Denver can be. They are going to need some other players to step up, but I think Peyton Watson has overall played well during some of these stretches. And then I've been intrigued by Spencer Jones for a little while now. And, if Aaron Gordon, hopefully it isn't, but if this is an extended absence for him, maybe Jones can step in because you need somebody with some defense to kind of fit into this rotation. And they have Jones who could potentially do that. He played the beginning of the second quarter. He actually closed the first quarter too. And then he played less in the second half, but the game took a little turn. One other kind of important
quickly on Jones,
sure.
The thing that one play that stood out to me was Alperen Sengun got the ball at the free throw line against him on a switch, and Jones just like stoned him.
Mm-hmm.
Like Sengun like couldn't move him, which I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's something to keep an eye on.
But an important area where Houston, you could say they lost the game, but it was likely unsustainable, is that the Houston Rockets, they shot the ball like fine from 3. You generally would kind of think of that as like shooting luck or everything else. The Houston Rockets were 2 of 13 on 2s outside of the paint. And if you add in the upper paint, they were a total of 10 of 31 on 2s outside of 5 feet. That's unsustainably bad. I don't think for the most part there was any like superlative Denver defense that was forcing that. Some of them were a little bit tough, but overall that's gonna improve in most normal games.
Yeah, they had like a men. I thought Jokic actually had one of his better rim protection plays. He jumped actually and like got his chest on a men, but a men would like to make that shot in the last 5 minutes against Jokic. And Peyton Watson also had a huge block as well on Sengun in the last 5 minutes too. But yeah, certainly 2 of 13 on mid-range jumpers for Houston. I mean, they should be a pretty good mid-range shooting team, and KD is going to shoot better there. Like he really struggled. And then the other thing was just Sengun was awful in this game. He had 14 points. He was negative 16. When I went to rewatch the last 5 minutes when I got home, I turned it on and he picked up 3 fouls in 1.5 possessions, including like 2 fouls that led directly to Denver buckets on rebounding plays. Now, one of them was a terrible call because it bounced completely to the other side of the rim and they called him for a push, which was just ridiculous. Like, you should never call a loose ball rebounding foul in that situation. The uncatchable pass rule, I would say, unless the guy like literally tackles him. And this was just like a little shove and flop by Jokic, who's getting better at that every year, sadly, for my own aesthetics, but good for the Denver Nuggets and him. Another thing I guess I'm concerned about this a little bit, that Cam Johnson, and he did have a huge 3 when Reed Shepherd, who had an up and down defensive game. Like, he went for a few too many steals that he just wasn't going to get against good players, and basically cost them 5 points by those gambles in the last 5 minutes of the game. One of them was he doubled Jokic, but then he took like an extra 3 steps towards him trying to steal his dribble. Like, no, buddy, you're not going to steal Nikola Jokic's dribble. And, he's a precocious lad. Like, I get it. This is very early in his development. This is the first crunch time he's basically ever. I can't remember whether he got in due to foul trouble in that OKC game, but he's the first crunch time he's basically ever playing with this group. So he's going to have to learn what he can get away with. And, this is going against Nikola Jokic, but he doubles him. Jokic kicks it out for a Cam Johnson 3. Another time, Shepherd just goes for a steal at half court, and that led them just to be in terrible order the whole rest of the possession, trying to scramble and get out of matchups, and Denver ended up scoring. So that wasn't great. But Cam Johnson, other than that one shot, I mean, no Aaron Gordon, no Christian Brown at this point, and he still only gets 6 shot attempts. I just don't really understand. And like they're to the point where they're actually hiding Shepherd on him. And they did put Shepherd in action with Johnson, but I didn't love it. And Johnson I thought Johnson had a pretty decent defensive close to the game too. He was active, helping on the short roll and contesting shots, but they didn't bring him in for his defense.
It's a concern. And it takes time to learn how to play with Jokic. We've seen that with a number of different players over time, but usually he could be more industrious. Cam Johnson has played with other good players before, and even if Jokic
but why is Tim Hardaway having no trouble getting up shots?
And Tim Hardaway Jr. never has any problem getting up shots.
But like Cam Johnson is a better shooter than him, and he's a better defender. Like why can Tim Hardaway Jr. do that and Cam Johnson can't? Cam Johnson has more ways to score than Tim Hardaway too, because he actually enjoys something inside the arc as well. So I don't really understand that too much. But let's see, what else do we have to talk about here? The matchups I thought down the stretch were kind of interesting. What did you make of those in the last 5 minutes? Shepherd on Johnson, KD on Peyton Watson, Amen and Şengün guarding Murray and Jokic, and then I think it was Jabari Smith on Tim Hardaway.
The Reed Shepherd component of it, I think it kind of makes some sense as you kind of work through it. I think having him Shepherd on Tim Hardaway Jr. So the reason you'd rather have him on Cam Johnson than Tim Hardaway Jr. if that in those configurations is because you'd rather, if he's going to be that precocious lad, as you described it, then in some ways with Tim Hardaway Jr. is less gun shy than Cam Johnson is right now, or whatever the reason is there. I would actually consider, depending on who's closing for the Denver Nuggets, having Reed Shepherd on Peyton Watson and just kind of the same theory, similar theory that I've used a lot with bigs. Incidentally, Alperen Şengün was core in this, where it's not about necessarily putting a player, that guy on the other team's worst shooter. It's on the least involved player, because Draymond Green is a key part of this. Like, just because somebody's a bad shooter, somebody can be very involved in the offense, whether they're a good shooter or not. Peyton Watson is not super involved in the Nuggets offense. So you could try that. Now, in my configuration where I talked about Jabari and Amen guarding Jokic and Jamal Murray, then you would use Şengün in that spot. But there are some modifications that can go into it if these teams play in a series. And in terms of KD, I think that's fine.
Yeah, here, so to react to what you're saying, so they had KD on Watson, and I think the reason was Watson was going to just be staying in the corner, and KD provides some rim protection. He did have a big block on Jokic coming down the lane that Jokic thought was a foul. Also, though, had another play on that Murray layup I talked about earlier. That was one of the key shots. KD he's got to just get over there and get his chest on Murray, which he just didn't. And Watson's in the corner. Peyton Watson had 0 3-point attempts in this game. Like, you got to make him attempt a three. Like he did. I get that he did have 30 points and hit a bunch of threes against New Orleans recently. I think it was against New Orleans. Who did they play on Wednesday? Some little sister of the poor, but it was
it was Phoenix, actually. Was it? No, it was New Orleans. You're right. It was New Orleans.
Yeah. But yeah, you still, instead of letting Jamal Murray get a layup, like, you got to make him throw that pass. And hey, you can still rotate out of that too. Like, it doesn't mean that you're automatically giving up a wide open corner three just because you help off of him and prevent a layup. So, but I think the other thing is that KD, I think you're starting to get is like he's really bad at getting over screens too. And so, and he still provides some rim protection for you. And so I think that's why you just don't. And he's also just like not very good at guarding shooters. Like he'll just kind of fall asleep. He's not doesn't have a ton of energy to close out. You're giving him the ball every time on the offensive end. So I think I probably would have stuck with that. I maybe would have said, yeah, let's put Shepard on Tim Hardaway Jr. instead rather than Cam Johnson. But uh that's there's no great place to hide him. And then if Aaron Gordon is back, obviously that would change some of these matchups as well, but by quite a bit. If Aaron Gordon now can shoot, and that would be an issue. But I have a feeling we're not going to see Aaron Gordon for a month, unfortunately.
I also thought it was a weird offensive game for Jabari Smith Jr. Like he hit a couple of big threes, including the huge one in the corner that almost got the Rockets back into it. But he also like just you don't feel him inside the arc nearly as much as it feels like a 6'11" guy you probably should. And his decision making still leaves a lot to be desired. So he needs the three ball, had it in this game. But like I wonder how he fits. Like there are some times where it just seems like his possessions stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm fine with him just getting out in transition, cutting to the basket, and crashing the glass for offensive rebounds. Now, somehow he was 2 for 9 on twos in this game, and that included 2 out of 8 in the paint. So it's not like he was taking a bunch of mid rangers or something like that. Even his one mid ranger was pretty close to the block. So which was like more of a post up type of play, which he'll do every once in a while. But so I don't know what happened to him there in terms of his finishing. And yeah, I mean, he was 5-11 from 3, but he missed 2 huge corner threes on the right side. And we could talk about the end of the game here too. So KD and Şengün pick and roll. Really difficult to defend, right? Like, because if Şengün sets the screen, KD is going to just hit a wide open mid-ranger unless you're up. And Jokic doesn't want to be necessarily back either. Usually that's because if guys get going downhill on him, he's not going to be able to protect the rim. But here also, like, he just doesn't necessarily want to defend in space. So what they decided they had to do basically was just to get Jokic. He wasn't really trapping, but he was up far enough that they got the ball out of KD's hands. And KD did, I thought, a pretty decent job of getting it to Şengün on the short roll in a 4-on-3. And I'll credit Denver. Like, I still thought there were some pretty good chances for Houston, but they didn't execute. Şengün threw a couple great passes to the corner to Jabari Smith. They're running most of these on the left side. Smith's on the right side. But Denver also really made some nice plays. Cam Johnson got in there and took got a box out foul on Şengün that I referenced earlier. But really, it was Jamal Murray who made 4 separate plays down the stretch that were huge plays. He made a play at the rim to get a stop. He made another couple of plays at the free throw line. He stepped up on Şengün. Şengün tried to throw it underneath to Amen Thompson, and Murray got a steal. So he was just really active. There was one play where he didn't quite make the play, but he also at least slowed down Şengün, and then Peyton Watson was able to make the play from behind. I thought Watson did well, because the way they were kind of doing it, because the Rockets aren't a great ball movement team, was once KD gave the ball up, then Watson basically was just going to run back into the play and try to get a block from behind, because leaving KD. So, and they did actually manage to swing it back out to KD a couple times off of offensive rebounds, and he just missed as well. So I thought Houston was generating pretty good stuff. Like, I feel decent about their ability to get good looks. They just didn't quite execute. I think if they're going to clean anything up, it's got to be more on the defensive end.
One of the most bizarre things about the close of this game was I thought Houston missed their best looks and then made some of their most surprising ones, like Amen Thompson getting a give and go 3 as the inbounder when they were down 6. That cut it from 6 to 3 with about 20 left. That was one of their weirdest looks. That one went in. Then they got, Şengün driving downhill, but Peyton Watson gets that beautiful block on him. And it was that's going to be, it's a make or miss league. Things can happen like that. But like, so I agree with you. I think the Rockets, they could have scored better than they did, just even running it back, just with the same opportunities.
Yep, I think that's right. And then a couple of words on the very end game. Denver is up 4. Şengün got blocked on that play by Watson with about 35 seconds left. Maybe it was even 40. And so Denver is getting pressured up by Houston. They're into the front court. And finally, Houston up 4 or down 4 fouls with 10 left on the shot clock and about 25 seconds remaining in the game. I think by that point, you just play it out and try to get a stop. But they made both free throws, pushed it to 6. And Houston ran a nice play to get it right back to Amen as the inbounder, who's never going to get guarded because he's three-point shooting has not been great, but he made that one. That Jabari also made an impossible fading 3, a couple of missed free throws by Denver. And so Houston had a chance with no timeouts to 2.7 left. And of course, they just throw it into the backcourt with a guy with like no momentum. It's like, yeah, he's going to have to shoot it from half court. You have no chance. They're like, just throw it into the front court, please. Like, and Denver always does that. They always try to throw it into the front court. They know. But like once you throw it into the backcourt, unless you do like, I mean, the one exception is you got to do something like Dallas did on Wednesday, where they throw it to a guy who then hits someone who's already has a ton of momentum streaking up the floor, and then you can get into the front court that way. But like, if you don't get the ball close to the 3-point line, like you're not going to make the shot. It's pretty obvious. What do we think of the overall matchup between these teams?
There's a lot that can be different when they face off, but the core conceit is that I think Houston's going to have to devote more personnel to defending Nikola Jokic, and considering Aaron Gordon, one of their best players, basically didn't play in this game and the Nuggets were still able to win on the road, I think there are a number of advantages there. Houston has more layers, especially when you consider who they play and like Dorian Finney-Smith not being available and all that stuff. So I think I'd love to see the series first and foremost. I think knowing what we know right now, assuming relatively even health, I'd go advantage Nuggets, but hard fought, lots of fun games. I wouldn't say that it's like a clear cut front runner, because Houston's their quality of overall players is just so high, and they're so hard to play against because of the pressure they put on the glass, that it would be a bizarre but really fun competitive series.
Yeah, Houston against a Denver team that was playing Valanciunas and Jokic. Jokic usually is great on the defensive glass, but Houston did have their usual 42% offensive rebounds. And I also think that Houston can finish a lot better. Where I do think, though, that outside of the offensive rebounding, Denver didn't necessarily feel Houston in the way that they could if you had Eason, and maybe even if you had Finney-Smith. You know, I thought, again, Shepherd emerging, I think, kind of just changed things. Like Josh Okogie's been an important player for them, too. He really didn't play much in this. So there could be a different element where Houston just generally puts more pressure on, uses their athleticism, or kind of the Minnesota formula against Denver, that with the personnel that was out there, we just didn't really see much of in this game. Another problem for Houston is that Steven Adams is just terrible. He's always been terrible at guarding Jokic, going back to the OKC days. And there was one play where they put Adams in as a defensive replacement once Şengün picked up 3 fouls in 3 possessions and had 5, and Jokic gets it with 3 on the shot clock, and Adams just like stands there and lets Jokic shoot over him. Like, it's like, okay, yeah, it's technically contested, but like, no, you got to get your chest into his face and like not let him get the shot off at that point, 20 feet away from the basket with, 3 on the shot clock. And like, yeah, guess what? The guy can like shoot it from behind his head. You're not like, he doesn't feel a contest. You have to get so close to him that he like can't even get the shot up in that circumstance. But so that's not great. I mean, I think, Houston's zone stuff is not really going to work that well against Denver. There's too good as a passing team. But I do agree with you that Ime Udoka probably has more levers to pull. But, what difference would Aaron Gordon make in this matchup? What difference would Christian Braun's ability to get out in transition make in this matchup? So there are some other aspects as well to this. And, Ben Thompson, can he be more effective if he doesn't have to play 44 minutes like he did in this one? And I think Şengün also can just play a lot better. But the one thing I will say, I don't think Şengün is really going to be able to like just go through Nikola Jokic necessarily. Jokic is pretty big and strong. That's one thing, and he's got good hands. But that's interesting how they're going to unlock Şengün. I mean, I think one of the things that I really would like about that is more Şengün 5-1 pick and rolls with Reed Shepherd, or even let Şengün handle the ball and have KD be the screener. Like, that could be pretty interesting too. Invert that, and then like Jokic is not going to get through that screen. So what are you going to do? You're going to switch it. If you double Şengün, then KD has a wide open pick and pop. So that's another thing they could go. Like, they're just, Houston again is just kind of scratching the surface of what they can be, and they're going to have even more guys they can bring in. But I mean, I think I ultimately would default to the experience of Denver. I think it could be one of those series where you're just like, man, how did they not beat them? Like, that kind of seems like where we would end up. And Houston's defense just hasn't been that good so far this year. Like, they got to get better on defense. They got to get better on their own defensive glass, where they haven't been nearly as effective as they should be.
Two other things on this game. One is there were massive NBA Cup implications on this one, but we'll save that until we talk about the other West Group C matchup. This was a huge winner gets in the driver's seat. Denver now in the driver's seat. The other one, which is just, I'm just tabling this I'm just throwing it out there for right now. The Houston Rockets have the number one offense in the NBA. With Alperen Şengün, 57% true shooting, that is below positional average, and Amen Thompson at 53% true shooting. They're just doing it in a very different way. I mean, even KD's at 61%, which is very good, but it's not like insane for as good as
that's below his recent standards.
And so, but they're doing it in different ways. But I mean, and it's not like it's Jabari either. Like, I will just very brief. Reed Shepherd, 66% true shooting. But it's fascinating that they're doing this in a different way.
No, I agree. Now, I'm not sure how sustainable that is. I mean, Eason was shooting a crazy percentage from three. That's fallen off. I mean, Shepherd can't continue to be quite this good from three, because that's the thing, is that they're hitting every three right now, even though they're not taking that many. So that is probably going to fall off. But the offensive rebounding does come to play every night. At least that gives them a pretty decent floor. And the other thing too is that just you're forcing other teams to have to play two bigs as well. And that gets them out of rhythm, probably hurts their offense. But yeah, I do think Houston needs to be better defensively to really, like, they've been a little above their head of late on the offensive end. Well, Phoenix and Minnesota, and this is one of the absolute all-time collapses by Minnesota. I mean, it was a Cleveland Cavaliers / Milwaukee Bucks / New York Knicks-esque collapse in the last minute of this game.
I rewatched, we had it kind of on a side screen as we're at Warriors Trailblazers, more on that later. And so I knew the result before going back. And there's this moment. So the Timberwolves are up 109-104 with 1:31 left. Devin Booker has already fouled out. And Julius Randle deflects and steals a Colin Gillespie pass and gets fouled. And I just have in my notes, in all caps, how do they lose this game? And we will talk about how they lost this game. But
I mean, Booker having fouled out too. I mean, that's the craziest part maybe of any of this.
And then, so I'm like, okay, how'd they lose this? And then Julius Randle splits the free throws. I think this is just emblematic of how this happens. He splits those free throws. The second free throw is bouncing around. Randle draws a second consecutive foul on Royce O'Neal. He splits those two. So then it's 111-104. And you're like, how did they lose this game?
Yeah, well, the answer was 3 consecutive turnovers. I mean, this is pretty incredible too. They failed to score on 5 possessions in the last minute. And to only even advance it to the point where you got free throws on one of those possessions, it was pretty remarkable. I mean, Julius Randle was awesome down the stretch to get him that lead, right? He got a couple of offensive rebounds where he was just beasting, made some great hustle plays. He made that interception at half court, Colin Gillespie, point guard. Let's not forget Grayson Allen, who's their other ball handler, is out at this point too. And so then Randle gets his own free throw rebound, another hustle play. As you noted, they're up 111-104. And there were a couple of weird plays before the comeback started with Jaden McDaniels just grabbing Royce O'Neal 20 feet from the ball and getting called for a foul. It was almost like Draymond Green on Michael Beasley-esque in 2016, his first flagrant. There's another weird play where Gillespie just smacked Rudy Gobert in the head, like way after a foul had been called out on the perimeter as they were pressing. But yeah, so I thought Minnesota, yeah, they had some pretty hopeless turnovers, but they also lost it just by not really hustling, right? Like there's one play where Jaden McDaniels doesn't go for a loose ball. Then after that, Ant gets beaten by Royce O'Neal to a rebound. Royce O'Neal, when's the last time Royce O'Neal had a dunk? And just goes right inside of Ant and like gets a tip back after a miss.
Well, I have another one. So basically, Dillon Brooks takes a three over Jaden McDaniels, misses it. Royce O'Neal gets put back. I'm not going to kill the Wolves for that. So the Suns on the previous possession.
Yeah, well, you could box out Anthony Edwards. You could box out, or you could jump. You could jump for the rebound, or you could attempt to block Royce O'Neal's shot. Okay. You could do any of those things.
So the previous trip down, the Suns pressured in the backcourt. It eventually led to that foul on DiVincenzo, and then Gillespie hit Gobert in the head. They didn't call anything related to that. And so it is true. I had the Wolves feed. Jim Peterson is correctly complaining that Dillon Brooks should have been called for a delay game. He handled the ball. But Minnesota wasn't pushing the ball forward. But here was the big mistake that they made. And it's another one of those kind of like preparation things. You know that the other team is pressuring. Minnesota only had 2 players other than the inbounder in their own backcourt. And so they didn't really have many places for the inbounder to go. And then Gillespie ends up deflecting that ball, becomes a steal. So they're up 6 with 49 seconds to go, and then give up a rapid fire 3. And so the lead goes from 6-3, and there's still 44 seconds left.
Yeah, and that was a Royce O'Neal as well. So then they finally actually managed to get it up against Dunn with Randall. Because they're playing DiVincenzo. They don't want to give him the ball. He's too unreliable. Ant and Randall are their 2 guys. So Randall brings it up against him, and they run the time down. Randall drives, but the more good nail help from Phoenix, turnover. And then again, Anthony Edwards is back, and he lets like Royce O'Neal just go in and shoot a layup on him. Like no foul, no real attempt to jump. Like you can't stop Royce O'Neal in transition. And then this was a crazy play in the inbound.
Actually, that was Jordan Goodwin, not Royce O'Neal.
Fine. He's even smaller.
He's even smaller. I just wanted to correct it.
Excuse me. Yeah, sorry. I was looking at that on a very small screen, so I missed it. But it's good to correct me. The older I get, the more mistakes I'm making. So yeah, and then they try to inbound the ball, and this is just a crazy play where they just throw it over the head of the intended target, steal by Phoenix, but then Dillon Brooks shoves, who was it? Randall? It was Randall. Yeah, and it wasn't even really like that integral to the play. Jaden McDaniels comes over, gets an amazing block as the foul is being called. So total bailout. Minnesota was about to, in theory, give up a tying layup.
No, that would have given them the lead. It was 113.
Yes, excuse me. Yes, of course. That's right. Yeah, it would have given them the lead. Instead, they finally get in. They advance. They get a timeout, advance the ball. Right.
The other weird thing about this, now you could argue that the push wouldn't have happened without the steal, but because Phoenix had taken control of the ball, that was an offensive foul rather than being free throws for Minnesota. It would have been Randall. Like if it was still like in the air, it would have been Randall shooting free throws rather than it being Minnesota ball. And that ended up mattering because of what happened next.
Yeah, the Suns challenged that foul. It is ruled a foul. Don't challenge loose ball foul. Steve Kerr did that in the Portland game as well. Not a good idea. You're almost never going to win those ones. So Wolves then take a timeout to advance the ball. Their last timeout with a 1-point lead. And then they throw it in the backcourt to Anthony Edwards, and he is barely getting across half court, gets trapped right at the mid-court line by Ryan Dunn and kind of got bailed out by a foul call. And then he misses both free throws. The first one was close. Second one was not very close. and Suns get a timeout. I thought they might actually try to push it up with 11 seconds left, but they take the timeout. I guess they didn't have Colin Gillespie in because they were trying to just get the rebound, which they did. And then they just ran a little brush screen up top. Gillespie was on the inbounder. The inbounder went to go screen, DiVincenzo was on the inbounder. The inbounder went to go screen for Gillespie, getting DiVincenzo onto Colin Gillespie, which is the exact matchup I would have wanted. Great play call by Jordan Ott there. And Gillespie just goes in, the only guy who's going to do anything off the dribble on this team, and just scores over DiVincenzo. They don't really help at all. The one thing I will give Minnesota credit for is Chris Finch in the timeout. I had them ready to be like, hey, if they score, we have no timeouts. Push it up really fast. They do that. Gillespie makes another great play to double team Ant and make him give the ball up in the backcourt, stop his momentum. They get it to Randall. Seems like he's just kind of sauntering up, and then he goes for a step back, maybe 2 feet behind the line, doesn't get anywhere close to making it, and that was the game. But yeah, Phoenix Suns, pretty incredible. Anything else you had on the end of the game other than just this very Wolvesian, like an old school Wolves collapse?
It was such a disaster for that. I mean, the sheer volume of turnovers and just mistakes. Oh, there was one earlier before the very, very end of the collapse. I thought it was a pretty bad transition take foul call on Julius Randle because he did go for the ball. It wasn't really a give up. And that was a difference of the differences because it wasn't, they were in the bonus or anything like that. It was a difference of 1 free throw because you get a free throw on transition take foul. And considering the outcome, I thought that was significant. There were a couple of weird calls just in the end of this game. So that I just wanted to mention because to me, I don't like the current rule. I think that they should do it, but I think you have to be at least consistent. If the guy's making a play for the ball, that's the loophole that you've given within the rule. Then if that's what the player does, then you shouldn't call a transition take foul.
I love it. Give me all of the transition take fouls. But I mean, I hear your point out, but so actually, one last thing on the last play, John Krasinski made this point. I just thought it was good. I was like, why don't you have Jalen Clark in the game? Why are you sticking with DiVincenzo, who I guess was fresh? Clark had only played 8 minutes. You don't necessarily want to exhume him off the bench in that situation, but Colin Gillespie wouldn't have gotten right at Jalen Clark like that and scored on him. And DiVincenzo was, as much as he's a try-hard guy and he gets some steals, you have 4 steals in this game. Minnesota had 17 steals overall. And Phoenix had 13, by the way, including a bunch in the last minute, as we talked about. But that was, I think that was an oversight that you probably should have Jalen Clark in there at the end. And they spoiled a great effort from Edwards, other than in the last minute of the game. He had 41 points. 14 to 24 from the field. He was fantastic. Again, Minnesota went for this one pretty hard with it being an NBA Cup game. Love to see that. Well, I guess my biggest takeaway here, this is the first time we've talked about the Suns in a while. They just have guys who are playing hard, who are tough. And it's just Royce O'Neal has a larger role now. Dylan Brooks, this is kind of the second. I always thought that Fred VanVleet got a lot of credit, but Dylan Brooks should have also gotten some credit for the turnaround that took place in Houston. Mm-hmm. And also kind of worth noting that Memphis's defense has never been the same since he left. And, he can guard anyone he spent a lot of time on Randall in this game. I thought he did a pretty decent job on him. Randall's been great of late. Randall only got up 6 2-point attempts. I thought Brooks was a big part of that. And then Jordan Goodwin is another guy. And Gillespie is a really tough guy too. He had 20 points, plus 14 coming off the bench in this one because they started Booker, O'Neal, Dylan Brooks, Ryan Dunn, Mark Williams. So basically one guy you can dribble, which I don't know why they don't just start Gillespie at this point. But he's also just another like feisty guy. Jordan Goodwin is that as well. Nick Richards is going to play hard. So credit Jordan Ott, and Jordan Goodwin, for the way that Phoenix has really just played a lot harder. And that's been the biggest difference. And their fans really seem to be appreciating that a lot too. I thought Devin Booker was awful in this game and they still managed to win it. He was 4 of 18, 10 assists, 9 turnovers, and fouled out. And I thought he just looked totally out of gas. He couldn't get any separation.
And got a technical as he fouled out in a close game.
Yeah, but he just couldn't get any separation against anybody. Like Julius Randle was stoning him on switches. He's had. I just happened to have turned on like some of his worst games, which he just hasn't been getting separation. He's had much better games that I've seen highlights of. But yeah, so like Phoenix being able to get 19 offensive rebounds, that was nice too. And this is definitely a change of possession kind of game. Both teams had 19 offensive rebounds. And then I mentioned that there were 30 steals in the game too. Yeah. So it was a big possession game.
Well, and so, I guess the place we can leave this is that this is a gargantuan loss for Minnesota in terms of the NBA Cup. And even if Minnesota, if they had won this game, they have a huge point differential. They went into today with a plus 54 differential. And so even if they had lost to the Oklahoma City Thunder in the last game, they likely still would have been the at-large, the wild card from the West, because they would have had the best differential unless they got just trucked by the Thunder. And instead, now they're 2-1. They have to beat the Thunder in OKC in order to advance out. And if they do that, then they would likely win the group. But they have to do that to even survive at all. And so to lose a game like this that has these implications, and by the way, this puts both teams at 10-6 on the season.
Yeah, and Phoenix hasn't gotten great wins so far. They had a good one over San Antonio to deal them their first loss and really frustrated Victor in that game. But this is another nice win for them at home, although they wouldn't say they dominated it exactly, but Let's turn now to what took place in Chase Center today. I came into this one thinking, if the Warriors are serious, yes, they're coming back from a road trip, but Portland just has a ton of injuries right now. Drew Holiday is going to miss 1 to 2 weeks now with this calf issue. Shaedon Sharpe is still out. And Scoot Henderson is going to be reevaluated in 2 to 4 weeks. Apparently, he's like just starting basketball activities right now. So this is going to be a 3-month hamstring injury for Scoot Henderson. Like that must have been like one of the worst hamstring tears I ever heard of. And Chris Middleton had one where he tore, I think, with the hamstring tendon and had to actually have surgery. And then that was like a 4-monther. I think that was like 16, 17, I want to say. But yeah, this is like one of the worst hamstring injuries I can remember. That's not, for a guy who's trying to be athletic and explosive, that's not great. And then Drew Holiday, he was a late scratch for this game, and he's supposed to be out 1 to 2 weeks. And then Shaedon Sharpe, he was like playing through this calf injury, and now he's missed 2 straight as well. So it was Denny Avdia basically playing point guard. They were running everything through him. We talked about his performance against Chicago, but this was a game where I was like, all right, the Warriors are just too experienced here. They're going to figure out a way to pack the paint. They're going to get the ball out of Avdia's hands. They're going to make this limited shooting team beat from the outside, and like they should be able to outsmart this group. And instead, they just got lit up.
I thought this was a defensive loss for the Golden State Warriors, and
yeah,
they gave up a 124-5 offensive rating to the Portland Trailblazers, who they're at least 3 of their 4 best creators, however we want to define terms here, were out of the game entirely. They played Caleb Love a lot. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But the Warriors, and that's not just, sometimes when I use like the idea of a defensive loss, it's, the first shot, half-court offense. That was a part of it. The Portland Trailblazers, though, and they do play very big, and I want to talk about some of their bigs. They had 24 offensive rebounds. They had a 50%, yes, 50% offensive rebound rate in this game. And the Warriors are playing, they do play Draymond at the 5 sometimes, but they also played Al Horford a lot. They played Quentin Post a lot. And there were a number of different kinds of failings there. And so I didn't think that their strategies were great. I also didn't think that their hustle was good. But I think one of the most telling parts of this was the Golden State Warriors have more talented defensive front court players, especially than almost any team does. I mean, with Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, and not specifically relevant to this thing, Al Horford. And yet, in crunch time, Gary Payton
Well, I don't
II.
know if you saw this. Horford had a hamstring injury. That's why he didn't play in the fourth.
Okay.
Yeah, I that was actually a subject post game that he just wasn't on the bench, so he's probably going to miss a couple of weeks. It would seem like.
Even so, because this is going to be about Denny Avdia.
Yeah.
Gary Payton II is in the game and guarding Denny Avdia. Gary Payton, who is 6'2", 6'3", is guarding Denny Avdia because nobody else is doing it. Moses Moody guarded Avdia in the beginning and got completely torched. And then you have Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, and having Draymond do that, then he can't be as much of a help defender. But that makes things a lot harder for you in a lot of these other ways.
And Kuminga's out too. He's going to be, maybe he can return in their next game. He's going to try to practice on Sunday, but with this knee tendonitis, they really missed him in this game. I thought he's also been better as a rebounder this year as well.
But just not having Jimmy Butler do those assignments, not having Draymond Green and Denny Avdia, they have to put in Gary Payton, but he still had a very good overall performance: 26 points, 14 assists, 6 turnovers. But if he has the ball in his hands that much, like you can kind of live with that. They had 20 as a team, which is more than you'd prefer. But when you consider the constraints involved and you get 50% of your offensive rebounds, you will of course live with it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing you have to take away, I mean, Golden State had moments where it looked like they were going to blow Portland out of the gym, but Portland just kept scoring right with them. And Denny Avdia was massive. Like I thought, all right, maybe it's just an artifact of he was going up against the Chicago Bulls in the last game, and the Bulls are just going to try to run you off the 3-point line, and they're just like, they have absolutely zero rim protection, and Avdia was just going right through them. And but in this one, he just lit them up again. He had 26 points, 12 of 13 from the foul line, and 13 assists. And yeah, you mentioned he did have 6 turnovers, but when the Warriors would try to step up and meet him near the free throw line, he dimed up Donovan Clingan, or he would dime up a 3-point shooter. And Clingan, he had kind of a weird game, but he had a career high 22 points. Did that with 3 minutes left in the third quarter, and then basically never came back in, which was also kind of interesting. But he dominated. He had 5 offensive rebounds, but also he got a bunch of alley-oops. I think he had 6 or 7 dunks, and most of them were via alley-oop. And the Blazers have gotten a lot better at using him in the last few games, because when they throw the alley-oop, they basically throw it like a ball away from the rim. Most guys in the NBA who are like great alley-oop threats, you're throwing it to the corner of the backboard. Because you're catching them on the run, they can just take it there. Like Clingan can't catch it there, but his standing reach is so high, you can just throw it to the front of the rim, and he can just punt it over the front of the rim and dunk it.
There were 2 Blazers turnovers where they actually overthrew Donovan Clingan on alley-oops because he has, which was kind of hilarious. But they have some unusual passers on this group.
Yeah, but those, and I think this is something with Wembanyama too, and kind of why I've liked what Steph Castle's been doing in San Antonio is, be a little more aggressive throwing that alley-oop, because if you complete it, it is 2 points. So it's okay if you turn it over a little bit more than you would on other plays, because when it's complete, it's a dunk, and maybe it's an and one as well. And so Avdia's passing was really good. Then the other thing, and it was also a pretty remarkable thing, that they did this with Jeremy Grant not hitting a field goal in the game.
Yeah, he was 0 for 8 on from the field, 0 for 4 on 2s, 0 for 4 on 3s, and had 3 turnovers and only 2 assists. So like Jeremy Grant stepping into a starting role with both Drew and Shane Sharp out, and he had some good defensive plays, but he wasn't playing great. But the Portland Trail Blazer front court player who did step up was Robert Williams, and
He's back.
It warmed my heart. It was like
torture the Golden State Warriors and Draymond Green specifically.
Flashbacks to the 2022 finals where he was the best defender on the floor. And I thought Robert Williams earned his +4 in 21 minutes of action. I think he earned closing this game over Donovan Clingan. And he was, it's the old Warriors hallmark of like, they really struggle against active rim protection, especially when that guy's a little bit more mobile. And he was disruptive out there.
Yeah, and I think Tiago Splitter really managed the situation well. Now, he did note that he actually played Robert Williams over his minutes limit, but hey, it's the NBA Cup, baby. I mean, for this team, yeah, you know what? Go for it on the NBA Cup, because they actually can win the group now if they beat San Antonio. Like, this is a huge win for them. So Rob had to play, I don't know, whatever it was, maybe 15 straight minutes at the end of the game. But I thought that Tiago Splitter, as good as Klingon was playing and as effective as he was throughout most of the game, Golden State had this crazy run, a lot at his expense, where they scored 23 points on 8 possessions, which I have no way to look this up. It wouldn't surprise me if that's the most points that's ever been scored in an 8 possession stretch. And maybe there was some crazy, like flagrant fouls or something where they got more, like there were 6 technicals or something like that during a stretch where like a team melted down. But I mean, that's pretty good to score 23 points in 8 possessions. They had 5 Curry threes. They had a 3 by Horford, a Jimmy Butler and 1, and I can't remember who it was.
A Pajemski layup. It was
a Pajemski layup.
Yeah, that's what broke the streak of 6 consecutive 3-point trips.
Well, and the crazy thing about it wasn't even really feedback loose, because on those same 8 possessions, Portland scored 14 points. And so they were actually, Golden State was just coming down, and then Steph was working Klingon pretty well. Golden State kind of eschews that at the beginning of games with the drop center, just putting Steph in pick and roll. But then they started really going to that, and Steph was obviously on fire. He had 38 points, 14 to 23 from the field. I mean, he's been, other than that New Orleans game and sitting out against Miami, he's been awesome since coming back from that illness. It was kind of a shame that the rest of the team hasn't really been coming along lately. But so Klingon got beat up there, and I think Tiago Splitter, especially with Rob Williams, like he blocked a 3. He just absolutely smacked Draymond's shot twice. Like Draymond seems to just have no idea of like what Rob Williams' range is going back to those finals. And like Rob looked really good. I was talking to a scout before the game. He was like, yeah, he doesn't look great so far. And I was like, hey, he had a couple of dunks in the games I saw. He didn't play in that Bulls game that we watched. I mean, I've probably actually, other than Golden State, I've probably watched Portland more than any team this year, I would say. And yeah, I thought he was awesome in this game. And Golden State was still scoring pretty well down the end, but then Rob was getting some dunks as well. And yeah, like you said, he earned that +4. It had 3 offensive rebounds himself in 20 minutes. So let's hope he's not his knee didn't explode and he can continue on being a part of what they're doing, because they really need him. If it's a Young Hun-Sen time or going small, that's just not something that they can do sustainably on that second group.
2 other Trailblazers that impressed outside of the ones we normally talk about. CD Sissoko, I thought that his defense, his activity level was good. He had some offensive foibles, 3 turnovers, but he made his shots overall, and he made the Warriors work on the defensive end. Had some important plays where he kind of got the rebound or just made a good possession. Then the other one, at first, I thought Caleb Love, like he was struggling. He's on a 2-way out of UNC. He bounced around a couple of colleges. I think it was at Arizona at one point too.
Yeah, I think
it was at UNC, then Arizona. Yeah. And got a 2-way. And he can be a little bit aggressive with his shot at times, but this Portland team needs somebody who could be aggressive with a shot. And I thought if he had a little bit of a shaky start, but then overall, like they needed somebody to help give them some organization. And at certain points, you just need somebody to take a damn shot. And he took 14 threes in his 38 minutes off the bench in a regulation game.
Yeah, that was pretty remarkable. And he was 1 of 12 in that Bulls game, but I'm glad that I said, I think he can actually be a player. And yeah, he made his shots in this game, including, I think he took either 2 or 3 threes, like down the stretch, as Golden State just like couldn't get a stop to save their lives. And he did take one that was pretty insane with Portland up 4 and 14 on the shot clock with like a minute left that Tiago Splitter referenced after the game. But like, he's got decent enough size. He's pretty strong. He's old, obviously. He's been around in college forever, but he makes shots. He can dribble. He's an okay finisher. And probably not that great of a passer. I'm gonna guess, but he did have 5 assists in this game. I think he could be a NBA player and a backup point guard someday. And like, there's nothing as I watch it. I mean, all right, maybe he'll just not make shots and it won't work out. But as I watch him, there's nothing about him out there that looks like, oh yeah, he's just getting totally exploited. Like, this aspect of his game is just like, he's clearly not an NBA player in terms of athleticism or shooting ability or dribbling ability. Like, he's reasonably strong. So yeah, another good find by Portland in mining the bottom of the draft.
Brendan Pajemski had 20
Yeah.
points, and he only took 9 shots from the field because he got fouled and took 10 free throws, and most of those were earned.
That's got to be a career high. That's got to be a career high in free throw attempts for him.
10?
Yeah. What do you think? Is it?
I don't think it is, but I think it'll be some sort of garbage game that gets you mad.
It's always going to be some fucking game on the last day of the season or something. It's always that gets me on these.
Actually, it's not. It's February 5th, 2025. He took 13 free throw attempts. It was a game he started against the Utah Jazz. The Warriors lost it 131-128.
Okay, so that must have been a game when they rested their starters. I think I remember that game, actually.
No, Steph and Draymond played.
Really? Oh, maybe that was the game. Was that the game right before the trade deadline?
I believe it is.
Maybe like right after the trade.
It's like right around there, deadline? Yeah. In 2025, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I stand defeated that it's not a career high in free throw attempts for him. And the Warriors offense looked pretty good at times. Like, they were getting some pretty good cuts. Klingen gave him some problems. Obviously, Rob gave him some problems.
Well, and we talked about it a little bit, but Stephen Curry was amazing. Like, he was 9 of 17 from 3, but a couple of those were chucks at the end.
He made 10 straight shots in this game. Like, and this is another, like, a pretty good defensive team. Again, like, it's really, even with most of the guys who are coming in off the bench, like Chris Murray or, Sissoko started, but he's pretty decent. He just, Tamani Kamara is one of the best on-ball defenders in the league. Steph just had no problems with him at all. He's just been awesome. He did look a little bit tired early third after because he was on such a hot streak to end the first half that he was doing all the offense at the start of the third, which he usually doesn't. And he kind of struggled a little bit on defense, but he's 37. Like, this is just an absolutely ridiculous stretch that he's having right now. And that's where you have to be concerned as Golden State, is that he's kind of been going pretty nuclear when he's been available, and they haven't really, like, they've just been struggling to blow teams out too. Like, this should have been a blowout win if Golden State is going to be, a West pseudo contender.
I was thinking at different moments during this game about the idea when we did our preseason kind of predictions, and I said, what am I most likely to be wrong about relative to my own expectation? It was that the Warriors were going to be this insanely dominant team. Now, their fastball did this in the last 15, 60 minutes. That's still been overall good. But it's games like this that give you real pause of like, okay. And especially like, yeah, you logged a loss. They're 9-9. That's not as big a deal. But as you said, these are the types of games that these teams need to win. And that's not even including the NBA Cup implications, where if the Warriors had won this game, they would have been pretty much in control of their own destiny. Now, control of their own destiny means they would have had to beat the Houston Rockets. But now they're out.
Well, no, that's not actually the case, because they lost to Denver. So Denver would have still won the group had.
I guess that's true.
Yeah.
If they had both won out. Yeah, and their differential so bad they won't get a wild card. So I guess that's true.
Yeah, but they've now lost 3 straight, and you wonder with these old teams, it's like Portland is a team that's just going to play really hard and offensive rebounding and pace and finishing inside. Like, is this, have we reached the point where you just can't win without a lot of athleticism? Now, maybe they really need Jonathan Kuminga. Maybe they need a trade of some sort. Like, the Al Horford signing just hasn't really worked out so far. I do wonder whether when he comes back from this hamstring, which will probably be at least 2 weeks, whether they need to just like quit fucking around and just start him and actually play him. Because they're doing this whole thing. Oh yeah, we'll save him at the playoffs. He's only going to play back to back. He's on a 20 minutes limit, so we'll just bring him off the bench, and he's going to play 3 minutes a half with Draymond. Like, the whole idea of because they're just not defending well enough. Like they need more size than this. So and I think Al's shooting obviously is important too. Yeah, let's talk about the whole Western Conference here, and then we could talk a little bit about the East. Chicago, Miami. I watched the first half of that one, and we don't have to talk about the second half. But let's hit on
let's lay out the West. So the West going in alphabetical. Well, no, let's start with West Group C. So West Group C, where everyone came into Friday 1-1. The Blazers and Nuggets are now 2-1, and the Rockets and Warriors are now 1-2. They're both functionally out. And what's fascinating about this is the Blazers have the tiebreaker on the Nuggets because they beat the Nuggets already in that wild game we broke down in a prior NBA Cup gamer, even though the Blazers have been outscored net because they got demolished by the Rockets. And so what that means is both those teams still have the Spurs left, who presumably, unfortunately, will be without Victor Wembanyama, potentially without Stephon Castle for both those games as well. So Portland's game is first, and that game is in Portland. So Portland wins that game. They win the group. And then if Denver wins, they each have one remaining, then Denver is not definitively, but very they have a very decent chance of being the wild card because they already have a plus 26 differential and they would have to win that game. So Portland win and they're in. Denver win and they have a shot.
Yeah, it seems that way. And with no Victor Wembanyama, that Denver San Antonio game is also at home. And obviously, if San Antonio were to beat Portland, which could easily happen, then San Antonio versus Denver would be for the group on Friday. And just to take you through Group B, no teams, I believe. Oh, no, Dallas and New Orleans played a classic today, which maybe we'll talk about later. Actually, those two young teams that were kind of interesting. Went down to the end. But the Lakers are in total control in Group B, but they play the Clippers, who are actually 2-0. Two of the Clippers' 4 wins this season have come in group play against New Orleans and Dallas. But Clippers, maybe they could beat the Lakers, and then they would probably. I think they actually, if the Clippers beat the Lakers, they would clinch the group. Actually, if they beat the Lakers. So I think actually, is that right that the winner of Lakers Clippers on Tuesday wins the group?
There is a weird scenario where Memphis beats the Clippers and then gets a tiebreaker on them. I would have to run through those scenarios, but Memphis is not always the.
You're right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because Memphis has not played the Clippers yet. So yeah, Memphis could win out and then they would win. Yeah, so the Lakers could win the group. If they win, Clippers would not.
And that game is that game is on Tuesday of next week.
Yeah, so we'll do that. We're gonna do all 3. It'll be kind of a weird week next week, but whatever. We'll talk about that on Sunday. But the Lakers are plus 19. Nobody else has a particularly threatening point differential. Although again, Memphis could get there. We'll see if I don't think John Morant will be back next week, but maybe Jaren Jackson will be. But maybe if the Grizz could play the Kings, they would rack up 41 point differential every game, even without Jaren Jackson and Ja. And then in West Group A, the Thunder, they used a 31-4 run in the course of 15 possessions to turn it from a 5-point deficit to over at the end of the third quarter in Utah. And then the Wolves, as you noted, would have been sitting pretty. They could still be a wild card team. Well, actually, they could still even possibly win the group if they were able to beat Oklahoma City. But we'll assume Oklahoma City is going to win both of their games. Those are both at home against Phoenix and the Wolves. But the Wolves could still get the wild card. No, sorry, excuse me. Phoenix could still get the wild card even if they lose to OKC. They got to play Sac. But then probably Denver. I think those teams will beat each other up at least a little bit. Denver would probably be the favorite for the wild card if Portland wins as well. If Portland loses, then your wild card is probably going to be Phoenix, assuming they can beat Sacramento.
Yeah, it's probably
And
going
it
to
was
come out.
totally
It's
safe.
probably going to come out of West Group A.
In the East, the Raptors clinched, first team to do so. They destroyed Washington at home by 30. They are now of a plus 53 differential, so they're looking pretty good to be the number one seed in the whole East. And they also have a home game coming up against Indiana. They'll want to win that game, and they'll want to run up the score to get the number one seed. They should be in pretty good order to do that. Cleveland doing okay for the wild card after they beat Indiana. They're plus 33. The other team that might be in the wild card mix would be Miami if they don't actually win the group. So the Bulls could have been sitting pretty against Miami, but there's just a little matter of getting their ass just fucking kicked tonight.
Yeah,
that was a little bit of a problem. Because I tweeted, I was like, oh yeah, it looks like Norm Powell just hurt his groin. He's questionable to return. He's probably going to be out. Chicago can win this. They already beat New York. They should be sitting pretty. They got to just play the Bucks. The Bucks are without Giannis, and so they're probably not going to finish 2-0. Like, but Bulls could make it. And then basically from that point forward, they got outscored 175-3. The problem for Chicago, the way they are set up, is just that Miami was just too big, too physical getting in the basket. If you thought Portland was doing a lot to them in that regard, Jaime Jaquez just went absolutely nuts against them early on. It ended up missing a few shots late, but the pace of Miami, the athleticism, I thought Kashad Johnson came in and had some nice minutes. 4 offensive rebounds. He was plus 24, had 14 points in 30 minutes. They started actually Kelowna and Bam Ware was really good as well. He got a layup blocked early on, but then he came on, had a few nice dunks, and was really dominating around the basket. Had 4 offensive rebounds. Bam was excellent defensively, even though he didn't do much on offense. Davion Mitchell was 7 of 7 from 2. And this is, again, the Miami strategy of just having everyone on the floor who can do something attacking off the dribble worked pretty well when the Bulls have guys who aren't going to stop you from attacking off the dribble, like Josh Giddey, who got lit up pretty badly, and Dalen Terry left with a calf issue, but he couldn't really stay in front of anybody. The rim protection just wasn't there either for Chicago, and they got just totally run off the floor. See if I had anything else on that game. No, that's about it, really. I mean, Norm Powell did come back, as congratulations to him on being the first guy who suffered a muscle injury and was questionable to return, who actually did return. And he's just like so ridiculous with the go through the arm move for a foul. He got Giddey on it. He got Patrick Williams on that. And yeah, so it really was just Miami. It was like that play-in game that Miami blew him out in the first half all over again, except they poured it on even more in the second half. All right, what else can we say about the East standings before we do some news here?
The only game in East Group B was the Nets beating the Celtics, which formally eliminated the Celtics from it. They lost at the Garden 113-105. Michael Porter Jr. had a big performance. So East Group B basically comes down to Pistons versus Magic, which is the last game for both teams. The other 3 teams in that group have already been functionally eliminated. And then East Group C, the only game we had was Heat Bulls, which you just discussed. So in that group, it's the Bucks are 2-0, but they have no Giannis for at least a little bit of time here. They play the Heat and the Knicks. The Heat and Knicks
both on the road, by the way.
Then the Heat and Knicks both still play the Bucks, and the only other game remaining there is Knicks at Hornets, which is coming up next week. So there are still 3 teams that can win that group, depending on how Bucks Heat and Bucks Knicks go.
Yeah, and I don't love the Bucks' chances against Miami's style either, without having a ton of rim protection and also not really having any good perimeter defenders, other than Ryan Rollins, who is now also their only guy who can really attack off the dribble on this team too. So his defense is going to kind of be falling off. So you like Miami to win that. That game is also at home. And then for them, but the Knicks did beat Miami. The Knicks actually, though, have a negative point differential because they lost to Chicago, but Chicago is probably out of it as well. So if both Miami and New York were to win out, Miami only has that one game left against Milwaukee, then Knicks would win the group, but Miami is already plus 46. And so they would be in very good position for the wild card at the moment, particularly because Detroit and Orlando, who are pretty positive, would also have to play each other. Cleveland, who is at Atlanta. And I guess Atlanta could maybe get into the mix as well for the wild card, but they're only plus 8 right now. So that Cleveland is plus 33.
Yeah, but they still have the Wizards to play, so that plus 8 could be plus 38 pretty fast.
The Wizards still have never won an NBA Cup game. Unbelievable. They're the only one, right? I can't remember.
Yeah, they are. Because I think there was another team like Memphis or somebody that finally won one like last year. But I believe it was just
Memphis is 1-1 now. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the news around the league. LaMelo Ball was benched down the stretch against the Indianapolis Pacers. He was 5 of 21 from the field in like 27 minutes. The Pacers got their second win of the season. According to Kelly Iko, he is now open to a trade. He then denied it. Ball said, "It didn't come from me. The source wasn't me, so it's false information. Got to let them know I really don't like commenting on stuff, but it got too big." He added, "I love being here." Now, how many of these reports that someone would be open to being traded have turned out to be wrong in the end? And I also note that we mentioned Spencer Percy, our old friend of the pod, had some of this stuff that there was a disconnect over the injury and the organization getting a little frustrated. I mean, I think if a divorce can happen, maybe it can, but although this is an issue, Danny, when in North Carolina, you actually have to be physically separated for 1 year before you can get divorced. So, so maybe they're gonna have to just pretend
they're gonna have to consciously uncouple before they divorce.
Yes. Trey Mann also hurt his ankle. I mean, we'll see. I imagine LaMelo's going to keep playing, but it doesn't seem. I mean, I wouldn't want him to like not be motivated defensively or something. Like, what are they going to do there?
They have Kalkbrenner; they'll be fine.
Other big injury news: Domantas Sabonis has a torn meniscus, and this is kind of interesting. The reporting: he's going to be out 3 to 4 weeks. No indication that he's going to have surgery. So now sometimes the meniscus tear is small enough that you don't need to have surgery. You can just let it calm down. You can try to build up your strength again. A lot of times that's kind of a precursor for let's see if you can make it through the season like Jaylen Brown did last year, and then you get the surgery. I wouldn't really recommend that for most people, frankly. I mean, maybe it's small enough, but what is this going to mean? And then if he does eventually have surgery, would it be a repair? Would it be, which of course would have him basically out for the year? Would it be a trim, which would be, another 2 months basically to be out? But he's first going to take this 3 to 4 weeks to see if he can not have surgery. And then if it doesn't get better, he will have the surgery. I'm not sure what's going to end up happening here, but obviously he's been pretty ineffective this year when he's played. And then, he also is getting hurt quite a bit. This is his third injury of the season already. And also worth noting that it seemed like he really pushed to come back pretty early from that hamstring at the start of the year. And I don't know if it's the same leg or not that he had the hamstring issue in, but it seems like things are kind of cascading for him and certainly for the Kings as well. What else we got here?
Kelly Oubre, the injury is a sprained LCL, so he's going to be out at least 2 weeks.
Yeah, kind of a shame with Paul George coming back that he immediately is out. George looked pretty decent in their last game, though. And yeah, Alex Sarr, I don't know how long this is. He missed Wednesday's game against the Wolves that we talked about briefly. And Colin Murray Boyles, with the knee issues out, he had been dealing with some kind of a forearm issue earlier, but he didn't play against the Sixers, but they were able to take care of business in that game. Anyway, as we talked about, then probably the last thing of note we have to talk about is that the Lakers have fired Joey and Jesse Buss, who still actually own part of the team. The reporting indicated that they were the two who voted not to sell, because remember the way it was set up. What did you call it? You had like some term of art for what it was called.
A tontine. It's a tontine is a death pool. So basically, it's that
a death pool.
It's this old thing where it'd be like, you'd have an amount of money, like they were common, and I believe it was the second.
Oh, and is this the what are they called, like the Hellcats or something in The Simpsons, where the last surviving member gets all the Nazi treasure that they got?
Yeah,
and
so
like
that's called a tontine.
so that's good. That's good. Yeah, maybe that was Jerry Buss's inspiration.
I like how I use a World War II reference and you use the Simpsons reference. Both of these track.
But the Simpsons reference is about World War II.
That's true. And so basically, it's this whole bananas thing that Dr. Jerry Buss, one of the best, most effective owners in the history of North America in sports, did to his kids and his franchise. But seems like it's resolved now.
It seems that way. And I think Jeannie, maybe it was the fact that she was able to sell with this arrangement to Mark Walter, where she gets to be the governor still for 5 years. But Ramona reported also that some Dodgers executives who are part of just the overall Mark Walter group, including Andrew Friedman, are coming in and doing some consulting as they try to just ramp up the overall resources that are available. But it still seems like it's going to be Jeannie and Rob involved so far. We'll see what Jeannie's status will be 5 years from now, but that's long enough for her to at least get a parachute into the sunset and see out the Luka era. But that I think is probably why, because as we talked about, the reason the sale was made was the 6 Buss siblings, only one of them would be able to inherit and actually pass something down to their kids. And it's not like they have a bunch of other money. Each of them got a check for $900 million, Windhorst was saying today. So obviously they're going to vote to do it, other than the 2 youngest who wanted to just run basketball operations. And I think it was Jesse who did an interview with Dan Wojcicki saying, because they were actually running the Lakers scouting department, and they'd gotten some credit for some of these second round finds, your Carusos and Austin Reeves of the world. But they basically had been completely frozen out over the last 6 months and like hadn't even talked to Jeannie at all recently. It was a kind of a sad interview just to see that like their family's not doing great. But I think they're kind of not from the same generation necessarily. That will happen with some of Jerry Buss's proclivities. So a lot of drama. Maybe this is the end of the drama finally, but it is interesting that they just fired their whole, because they moved on from actually friend of the pod. Aaron Jackson was a Lakers scout as well. They had a bunch of other scouts that they just fired all of them. I don't know that they even have any scouts left right now. I don't know what they're going to do the rest of the way. I'm sure they'll find somebody, but and they do have their draft pick this year. And then Mark Cuban denied that the Lakers would try to trade Anthony Davis. He says, we want to try to win, to Joe Vard and The Athletic. Now, how much of a say Cuban in that really has, or Cuban really has in that? God, it's late. I don't know. But I think this is probably more posturing, and Cuban isn't even the decider. It seems like more just kind of public negotiation. Like, oh, we don't have to trade him. Okay. We'll see. That actually, you want to do a Watfo of that right now?
No, it's too late. It's too late.
No,
that can be their section of that could be their section of the 15 and 16 date.
No, I can't do 175% chance they're going to trade. I can't even say 175% chance anymore. All right, let's pack it in here. This was fun. Happy NBA Cup. Happy Friday, everybody. We'll talk to you all on Sunday.